And UN Security Council members have voiced their support for African Union efforts to mediate between Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan. The long-running dispute concerning the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam project, a giant hydropower dam and reservoir that Ethiopia has begun filling for a second year in the row, much to the alarm of its neighbours. Joining me now is our Chief Foreign Editor, Rob Parsons. Rob, this dam project is so disputed that some have even been warning about the possibility of a water war. So what makes this reservoir so incredibly controversial?
Well, if you listen to the Egyptians, the foreign minister was speaking just the other day, it's existential. Egypt is so dependent on the water of the Nile that if there were to be a threat to it, it would be a threat to the national existence of Egypt. And if you look at a map, you can understand why the Egyptians should be concerned. There are 100 million people living along the banks of the Nile in Egypt and Sudan. 97% of Egypt's water comes from the Nile. 60% of Egyptians are dependent on water, on agriculture for their livelihood. And most of the water that makes, if not all of the water, that makes that agriculture possible comes from the River Nile. 95% of the rest of Egypt is desert. So you can, when Foreign Minister Shukri uses the word existential, he really means it. If the water were to dry up, it would be catastrophic for Egypt. That is why the Egyptians are insisting on a binding agreement with Ethiopia that should be negotiated now, they say, through the United Nations. The United Nations has not agreed to that. It's recommended that the three countries, Ethiopia, Egypt and Sudan, go back to the African Union, which has been leading the talks so far, and try and find an agreement as soon as possible.
Is there any sign, Rob, that Ethiopia is indeed going to change track on this project and accept its neighbours' arguments?
Not very much, it has to be said. Ethiopia's argument, first of all, is that it's not doing anything out of order here, that building the dam is perfectly within its rights and that it is not threatening the livelihood of Egypt or Sudan, that both countries will continue to get water. When Egypt, for instance, complains that Ethiopia has started on the second stage of the filling of the reservoir for the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Ethiopia's response is this is a natural process now, that we're entering into the rainy season in Ethiopia, July and August, and naturally there will be more water entering into the reservoir than will leave, therefore it will fill. Nothing is going to stop it at this stage. So the question really is about the future. For Ethiopia, the dam is almost as important as the water of the Nile is for Egypt. This is the second most populous country in Africa, with one of the fastest growing economies, but desperately short of electricity. This will double the amount of electricity that Ethiopia will have and make it possible for it to develop much more quickly. It's a major, prestigious project for Ethiopians who have financed this almost entirely by themselves. $5 billion US, much of it through money that the Ethiopians have contributed themselves. So for them, this is absolutely critical. They're not likely to back down. What they're saying, though, is, look, we're prepared to accept a deal, but we want not a binding agreement, but an agreement which will give guidelines, so that in some years, for instance, when there is less water because of a drought, that we'll still be able to fill the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. That is not acceptable to the Egyptians, however, and therein lies the problem.